One of the biggest corruption scandals in the country in recent times involves retail holding company Steinhoff, dubbed by some as the biggest corporate fraud. It's understood to have cost the Public Investment Corporation about 21 billion rand in investments. Investigations and efforts to recover stolen money are still underway, and a proposed settlement between the Public Investment Corporation and Steinhoff is on the table. This forms part of a global settlement proposal, but the details of this agreement can only be disclosed once due legal process has been concluded. So, how far are investigations into this matter nearly 4 years later, and how are affected individuals coping? Our senior reporter Ayesha Ismail is tracking this story for us as part of today's Corruption Focus segment. Ayesha, thank you for making time. What's happening with Marcus Jooste and Steinhoff case?
Well, very interesting developments, two interesting developments today. And as you pointed out, this proposed settlement agreement that's on the table at the moment. But also the Western Cape High Court also ruled that it does indeed have the jurisdiction to hear a liquidation matter against the retailer. Now, initially Steinhoff was saying that the Western Cape High Court is not the place and does not have the jurisdiction to hear the liquidation matter. Today, the Western Cape High Court ruled that it does indeed, and so this means that this liquidation case can now be heard. But I did speak to COSATU's Matthew Parks earlier today, and he's the parliamentary coordinator, and I asked him whether he thought that any prosecutions would take place anytime soon, and this is what he had to say.
We hope so. I mean, this is a matter which has angered workers quite significantly. Workers lost over 20 billion rand of the Public Employees Pension Fund, but it's been 4 years down the road, and despite repeated actions caused by Parliament, by COSATU, etc., by the media, we haven't seen a single person being charged in court. We haven't seen a single cent being recovered, and this really tells us that the NPA is not serious about it. It's been 4 years. We've seen in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, the district court, where they are moving with it. So for us, it's a huge issue, because not only were workers' money stolen, but we don't see the NPA making any serious efforts to deal with the issue. And PricewaterhouseCoopers did provide a detailed forensic report on it, giving a clear paper trail. There's been countless media spotlight. Parliament had numerous public hearings on this issue in 2018 and 2019, and yet to date, 4 years later, we haven't seen anybody being charged on it.
Where's Marcus Jooste?
He's enjoying life. He has his holiday homes in Hermanus. He's got countless other property in Cape Town and around South Africa. His assets have not been touched, and the longer the NPA takes to deal with it, the more difficult it is to prosecute, because witnesses' memories fade, evidence is destroyed, people who know they're guilty will dispose of their assets and move out of the country, and at the end of the day, it'll be workers, public servants, who will pay the price and their money's being lost.
Now, in all fairness to the National Prosecuting Authority and the Hawks, you talk about the PwC report, but this was compiled from an accounting perspective and not necessarily, for criminal prosecution.
Sure, but still, it provided a useful paper trail to begin with, to look at what was done, who did it, etc. It is a huge assistance as compared to many crimes where there's no report to go on. This is a huge amount. The NPA has to be serious about it. It's not some small little petty crime where someone broke into a car. It's 20 billion rand that was lost from the Government Employee Pension Fund. It also had a devastating impact upon other funds invested in the stock markets, where Treasury estimated that about 200 billion rand was lost in share value across the stock market. And again, this should surely be a priority for the NPA. It was national headlines in South Africa. Parliament repeatedly called the Hawks, the NPA, the Minister of Police to come and account and explain what they're doing. They called PwC, they called Steinhoff to come to Parliament, and yet still, 4 years later, nothing's been done.
I recall that Parliament also called Jayendra Naidu from Lancaster 101 to come and account. What happened to that, and what's the status of Lancaster 101?
Sure, they pleaded innocence. They said they were also victims of the crime, etc., but it's not convincing. If you look at Paulsmoor Prison, it's full of people who claim to be innocent. But the fact is they borrowed money from the Government Employee Pension Fund, they played fast and loose with it, even if they were innocent, they were members of the board. They had a fiduciary duty to hold the executive to account for how the money is being spent. So at the very least, they failed on the fiduciary duties, and they should still be held to account. But what's happened is that everybody's played fast and loose with workers' pension funds. No one has paid a consequence for basically what is the greatest scandal, the greatest theft of the century in South Africa.